Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and this is National Commonwealth Day. And so I thought it would be fun if I shared with you some of my favorite mysteries from a variety of Commonwealth countries. But before we get to that, I need to show you the book that I found that matched the prompts from our last round of the March Mystery Madness M&M manuscript matchup game. Now, this time, we had to try to find a book that had an animal, something to do with an animal, and that was either written or set between 1950 and 1980. And I found Crocodile on the Sandbank by Elizabeth Peters. This was originally written in 1975. It has crocodile on the title, and it has a crocodile on the cover. And then I also remember reading this. This is set in the late 1800s, primarily in Egypt. And there are multiple scenes where they travel by donkey. So animals are totally a part of the story as well. So that's the one I found. I love this series, the Amelia Peabody series. They are funny, they are historical, and they have some good mysteries and great characters. So yeah, I really like this series. Stay tuned to the end of the video when I will do another round of our M&M manuscript matchup game. So, what is National Commonwealth Day? The Commonwealth is a group of 54 countries from Asia, Africa, the Americas, Europe, and the Pacific. 32 of them are classified as small states. It's a voluntary association of independent and equal countries with roots that go back to the British Empire, but any country can join. Most recently, Rwanda joined in 2009. It is a group with shared goals of development, democracy, and peace. So here we go. Here are some of my favorite mysteries from Commonwealth countries. And we are going to start with Canada because I am Canadian. So I wanted to talk about the Inspector Murdoch series by Maureen Jennings. This is a series that is set in turn-of-the-century Toronto. This one is A Journeyman to Grief, which is one of the later ones in the series. This series has 8 books that were written between 1997 and 2017. And as you can see from this cover, this is a TV show tie-in cover. There is a very popular TV show called The Murdoch Mysteries, which are really good, but of course it diverges from the books. I really like the books. Inspector Murdoch is a Catholic police officer in Toronto at a time when it would probably be better for his career if he was a Protestant. But he is a really good detective. He is interested in science and how science can help detectives investigate crime. The stories are always really interesting. There's great characters. Yeah, I really like this series. So if you are interested in a series set in Canada, if you're interested in a historical mystery series, then I really encourage you to check out Maureen Jennings and her Inspector Murdoch series. She also has a new series that's out with 2 books in it so far. This is the first one. This is Heat Wave, and this is set in 1930s Toronto. And she's got a connection to Inspector Murdoch because one of the detectives in this series is Detective Jack Murdoch, and that's William Murdoch's son. So that's a cool little connection. This is what she calls her Paradise Café series. And the main character is Charlotte, and she is hired in this first book to work with Mr. Gilmore in his detective agency. So this one is more of, instead of a police detective, we have a private investigator detective. And again, this is another great series set in Toronto in the 30s. So you get a lot of, the depression that was happening at the time, and kind of the run-up to World War II. And so, yeah, this is another really great series. All right, let's move over to Botswana. And I want to talk about the #1 Ladies Detective Agency series by Alexander McCall Smith. This is the second in the series, Tears of the Giraffe. This is a series featuring Precious Remotsway, and she, in the first book in the series, she starts a detective agency in the city of Gaborone. And so Botswana is, I mean, from what I've heard of it and what I've read in these books, is just a beautiful, beautiful country. And the one thing that I really love about this series is it's a nice, gentle mystery series with great, great characters. But what comes out loud and clear is a great love for the country of Botswana. And so I enjoy reading this series quite a lot. There was also an HBO show made. It had a few episodes, 1 or 2 series about this that's really good as well, if you want to check that out. And then I discovered that he also started writing some children's books about young Precious Remotsway, which is awesome. So if young readers want to read some mysteries about Precious, in this book she's 9 years old, then go ahead. I got this just from the library just yesterday, and I'm totally gonna read it. It sounds awesome. She goes to visit an aunt who lives at a safari camp, and she meets a friend there, a boy called Kumo, and there is an actor lion called Teddy who is starring in a film, and that lion goes missing. So Precious and her friend go to see if they can find the missing lion, and it just sounds so adorable. And there are just great illustrations. I really like the illustrations in this story. So there you go. If you want some middle grade mysteries from Botswana, you might want to check that out. Okay, then let's move over to Kenya. And for this is a series that I read a number of years ago, and I've actually just started to reread it. This is the Jade Del Cameron series by Susan Arruda. I'm going to put the picture here. There are 7 books in this series written between 2006 and 2015. The first book is set in 1919, and we meet Jade, who is an American who drove ambulances in France during World War I. And she heads to Kenya in that book to try and find the long-lost brother of her dead fiancé. And then after that, the books are all set in Kenya. And I really like that series as well. It's a great historical mystery series. I really like the character of Jade. She's really interesting. And yeah, a lot of interesting plots and characters. Yeah, so that one is really good too. Let's head over to India. And for the country of India, I actually couldn't narrow it down to just one book or series. It turns out I read a lot of books that are set in India, and I really love all of them. So I'm just going to tell you about all of them. The first is Murder in Old Bombay by Nev March. This is a historical mystery set in 1892 in Bombay, and this is an epic. It is an epic mystery, adventure story, love story, and I really loved it. This came out last year, 2020, and I want to read it again already. I really, really enjoyed that one. I also really like the Captain Wyndham series by Abir Mukherjee. This is the third in the series, Smoke and Ashes. This one is set in Calcutta. The first book, it's 1919, and by the fourth book in the series, it's 1921. Captain Wyndham is, he was a Scotland Yard detective and a soldier during World War I, and of course he experienced what you would expect, trauma during the war. He was a soldier, but then partway through the war he got like kind of seconded to military intelligence, and then his wife dies in the Spanish flu, and so anyway he ends up getting sent over to India for a fresh start. And this series is set in Calcutta, and I really, really like this series. There is a lot in this series about the tensions between the British people and the Indian people at the time, and the desire for freedom from the Indian people. He's got a sergeant that he works with nicknamed Surrender Not, who is an Indian police officer who really strongly believes that there needs to be more Indian police officers on the police force, and that causes problems in his own family and with his friends. And this is just a really, really great series, really well written, really excellent characters and plots. There are 4 in the series currently, and the 5th one is coming out in November of this year. All right, and then we have the Perveen Mistry series by Sujaata Massey, and this is the first one, The Widows of Malabar Hill. The second is the Satapur Moonstone, and there's a third coming out in June called The Bombay Prince. This is a great series. This is also set in the 20s. This is set in Bombay, and our main character is Perveen Mistry, who is one of the first female lawyers in India. And so that is a great setup because she's still not allowed to actually appear in court, but she is allowed to do other work that lawyers do. And so we get some really good stories focusing a lot on women and some issues surrounding women at the time. And this is a great series that I quite enjoy, and I'm really looking forward to the third one that's coming out. And then last but certainly not least is the Baby Ganesh Agency Investigation series by Vaseem Khan. The first one in that is called The Unexpected Inheritance of Inspector Chopra, and this is the second, The Perplexing Theft of the Jewel in the Crown. There are 5 in this series plus 2 novellas, and these are set in modern day Mumbai. And I love this series, even though I've only read 1 book in it. I love the writing style, I love the stories, I love the characters. And again, this is another series with a character who just absolutely loves his city and his country, and that comes out so clearly in the stories. There is a new series by this author that I'm really interested in that is set in Bombay. It's set in Bombay in 1950, and the main character is Inspector Persis Wadia, and she is India's first female police detective, and I am so fascinated by that, and I'm really looking forward to that series. The first in the series is called Midnight at Malabar House, and I've actually pre-ordered it, and I never pre-order books. And the second one is coming out in July of 2021, and that's The Dying Days. So yeah, if you've never tried Vaseem Khan, I highly recommend this series. It's great. Okay, now we're going to move over to Malaysia and Singapore. And for both of these, I want to talk about the Inspector Singh Investigates series by Shamini Flint. I love this series as well. The first one is called A Most Peculiar Malaysian Murder, so that one will count for a Commonwealth country. The second is A Bali Conspiracy Most Foul. The third is the Singapore School of Villainy, which will count for a Commonwealth country. And then we have A Deadly Cambodian Crime Spree, A Curious Indian Cadaver, that one would count, A Calamitous Chinese Killing, and then A Frightfully English Execution. And in that one, our main character, Inspector Singh, attends a Commonwealth conference on policing in London. So one thing that I love about this series is that Inspector Singh is sent to a variety of countries for various reasons, because of course these countries are pretty close together in that area of the world. Inspector Singh is a great detective. I really like him, and I really like this series. If you've never read it by anything by Shamini Flint, I highly recommend you check that series out. Then we are heading to the Caribbean with the Death in Paradise series by Robert Thorogood. There's a number of islands in the Caribbean that are part of the Commonwealth, and so I'm going with this series. There are 4 in the series: A Meditation on Murder, The Killing of Polly Carter, Death Knocks Twice, and Murder in the Caribbean. So this is the 4th one. These are written by the same man who created the Death in Paradise TV show. And in these books, The detective is the first detective from that series, D.I. Richard Poole, and but these are all original stories. I love these stories. They're great. They're very often locked room or impossible crime, which I always really enjoy. So this is a fantastic series to check out. Then Cyprus. Now I had a hard time finding any books that I've read that are set in Cyprus, but I have a book from my shelves that I want to read, and this is called Death in Cyprus by M.M. Kaye. This was written in the 50s, 1956. And so this is about someone who goes on a holiday trip to Cyprus. And so that's all that I had. I don't have a favorite yet from this country, but this is one from that country that I would like to read. And then Malta. This book I read a number of years ago, but I want to reread it because I remember it being pretty good. It's called The Information Officer by Mark Mills, and I'll put the picture here. This is set in the summer of 1942. For the people of Malta suffering daily bombing raids, the British are the last line of defense against the Nazis. And it is Max Chadwick's job as the information officer to ensure the news the islanders receive maintains morale. So, when Max is given proof suggesting a British officer is murdering local women, he knows the consequences of discovery are dire. With the violence on the war-ravaged island escalating daily, he embarks on a private investigation hidden from the eyes of superiors, friends, and the woman he loves. So yeah, that one is set during World War II, which is great, and on the island of Malta, which is interesting. So yeah, I think I need to reread that book, but I can recommend that if you're looking for a book set on Malta. Okay, and then over to the UK, of course. And for this one, because I read so many books that are set in the UK, I thought that I would see if I could find a book that is about the Foreign and Commonwealth Office or somehow connected to the Commonwealth. And I found one, and it's a book that I read just recently. It's called Buried in the Country by Carola Dunn, and I'll put the picture here. After many years working around the world for an international charity in the late 1960s, Eleanor Trewin has retired to the relative quiet of a small town in Cornwall. But her quiet life is short-lived when, due to her experience, the Commonwealth Relations Office reaches out to her to assist in a secret conference that is to take place in a small hotel outside the historical village of Tintagel. I'm never sure how to say that name. So yeah, so the guy who is the head of the Commonwealth Relations Office is a friend of hers, and he asks for her help. So there you go. I thought that was awesome. And then in Australia, we have the Jane Harper books, The Dry and Force of Nature. I'll put the pictures here. These are great. So the main character in this, he's in both of these books. She's written other ones, but these two have the same character. And both of them are have a mystery that is really connected to the weather. So in the first book, they've been experiencing a drought, so it's called The Dry. And she is so good at writing about atmosphere and time and place, because in that book, as they're investigating, this man goes back to his hometown for a funeral, and like you can almost taste the dust in your mouth. It is so dry. It hasn't rained for so long. You know, the creeks are drying up, the roads are cracked, and it's just dust everywhere and hot, you know, like she's so descriptive in her writing. And then in Force of Nature, in that one, a group from an office go into the woods, I think it's into the woods, for some kind of like office weekend or something, and only so many come back out kind of thing. But in that one, it's called Force of Nature because there's some sort of massive rainstorm or hurricane or something, I can't remember now. But anyway, I really enjoy Jane Harper's books, and she's got a new one just out called The Survivors, I think. So yeah, I can highly recommend her. There's also another series, and I've only read one so far, but I was intrigued and I want to go back to the beginning with this series. And this is a series by Sulari Gentile, and it's her Roland Sinclair series. He is a young artist and gentleman from a wealthy family and a reluctant amateur sleuth. And this is a series set in 1930s Sydney, Australia. There are 10 so far in the series. The first one was written in 2010, A Few Right-Thinking Men. I read A Dangerous Language from 2017, and it was really interesting. And then last but certainly not least is New Zealand. And so for here, I had to talk about Ngaio Marsh. Ngaio Marsh is a New Zealand writer. Most of her Roderick Allen series are set in England. He's a Scotland Yard detective, but a few of her books from that series are set in New Zealand, and this is one of them. This is Dyed in the Wool from 1945. It is a classic English country house murder transplanted to a sheep station on South Island. So I really enjoy Ngaio Marsh, and I think it's cool that she was able to set a few of her books in her own country of New Zealand. So there you have it. Those are some of my favorite books from various Commonwealth countries. Have you read any of these books? I would love to chat with you about them in the comment section down below. And now, let's play the next round in our M&M manuscript matchup game. Oh, what are we gonna get? Orange. Orange gives us detective. And orange again gives us a male detective. All right. Brown is the miscellaneous category. And yellow, yellow gives us weather or environment. Interesting. So for this round, we need to try and find a book that has a male detective and that has something to do with weather or the environment. So put your answers in the comment section down below. I would love to see what book you found that matches these prompts, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.